Hello and welcome back, and that is right. Today we want to talk about the best SSD flash NAS systems of the year. That's right, there's been loads actually released in 2024. I'm kind of blown away just how many brands are now jumping on the bandwagon of erring away from traditional hard drives and onto M.2 NVMe and SATA-based SSD systems. And that's what today's video is about. At the tail end of 2024 going into 2025, I'm going to give you my 3 big recommendations along with 1 honourable mention of the best flash solutions in desktop form that you should go for. But before we go any further, a few disclaimers. Number 1, any solution has to have been released prior to the end of October 2024. It has to be a device that's been available for review and available for purchase for users to really get to grips with. Another one doesn't have to necessarily been released in 2024, it has to be available, because there are still some great solutions released as early as 2022 that we could talk about. Also, I'm only going to be focusing on solutions that support M.2 NVMe's. The reason is that although there are SATA-based SSD systems out there, once you start looking at SATA SSDs, you can put these in pretty much any SATA-based enclosure. I am talking about systems that are leveraging the enhanced performance afforded to Gen 3, Gen 4, and in some cases even Gen 5 SSDs. Keep in mind, of course, that M.2 NVMe's cost more than SATA-based SSDs, and that leads to a higher price per terabyte, but it still has to be said that M.2 NVMe's are coming down in price, and as newer generation drives come out in Gen 5, some of the Gen 3 drives that give you around 3 a bit thousand megabytes per second become considerably more affordable. But before we go any further, we should err towards our honourable mention. This is a solution that doesn't quite make the cut of the rest of them. But I will say, before we get onto the honourable mention even, it's worth highlighting 2024 has been an absolute banger for SSD solutions. Whether it is you were looking at DIY, remember this earlier this year? This is a prototype upgrade card for the Minis Forum MS01 that turned that small workstation PC with a couple of 10Gs and Thunderbolt on board to suddenly having 6 NVMe's there, turning an i9 13th generation workstation into an incredible 6-bay NAS. Then you got things like Topton and CWWK in China rolling out small N305 and N100 flash 4x NVMe systems like this one that are incredibly affordable, some of them as little as 150 nicker. They don't count, of course, because we're only looking at turnkey, and these are DIY solutions that require a little bit more tinkering yourself, but still, it's been a great year for that. And then you've got things like the Ugreen series. This is the Ugreen DXB480T, a 4-bay Gen 4 NVMe system powered with an i5 processor, 10G on board, and Thunderbolt 4 connectivity. It's been a great year, but I'll say right now that for me, the honourable mention has to go to the Asustor Flashstor Gen 2 system. Now, it's arriving here in the studio at the time of recording in the next week or so, and maybe by the time you're watching this, the review's been put out. It's a great NVMe system, at least on paper, and I'll say right now, when I saw it at Computex 2024, this is a 6 and 12 bay Ryzen V3000 powered NAS system. It's got 10GBE, it's got USB 4 and therefore network Thunderbolt connectivity on board, and either with or supporting ECC memory depending on which configuration you choose to use. It is a powerhouse of a compact NAS system, and if it can perform as well as they say it will almost certainly be in the best flash NAS at the end of next year. But at least for now, it's an honourable mention. But without further ado, let's crack on to the actual winners, shall we? When I first saw the QNAP TBS H574TX, it was in summer 2023. This was a 5 NVMe i3 or i5 powered 10G and Thunderbolt 4 system from QNAP. It had their QUTS software on board, so it had support of ZFS, write once, read many capabilities there, lots of file backup and synchronization tools, multimedia tools there, virtualization tools, SaaS and PaaS migration tools, all of it humbled into one compact system. And we waited a long time for it. It eventually arrived towards the tail end of 2023, and although it is by a decent margin the most expensive solution on today's list, I will say it is still a hell of a great flash solution there. It has 5 E1S bays, so you can take advantage of traditional M.2 NVMe's in Gen 3 and add them and have hot swappable abilities on them. It's something that is sadly missing from the majority of M.2 NVMe flash NAS systems there. Also, although the system arrives for between $1,300 and $2,000, again varying on which of the memory options you go for and which of the CPU options you go for, because there are different configurations available, that is a complete package. It has a great warranty on it, it has a great software support on it there, and although QNAP software isn't anywhere near as smooth or slick as Synology's DSM, it's getting closer all the time. Now, there are some out there that would argue that you can get this level of hardware if you remove the E1S stuff there comparatively cheaper. Also, there is the lack of ECC memory on there that I think does bug some users. And there's the fact that the M.2 NVMe slots, although it's a Gen 4 CPU, due to temperatures and lane distribution, they've lowered them down to 3x2. There's lots of reasons that the system, I'm not going to say it's the perfect flash solution, but in terms of leveraging the hardware, leveraging the software, and leveraging some simple convenient options that traditional hard drive and SATA based NASs have, but scale them into a very compact, well designed, small footprint flash system, I really like this, and it will still remain to be in my top 3. I think this is the third time this little NAS has been in the best NAS of the years. This is the TerraMaster F8 SSD Plus. And frankly, I'm just surprised. I keep being surprised that this thing keeps appearing in front of me. Why is that? Because it's from TerraMaster. TerraMaster for years and years and years was the budget, it was the value, it was the cheap option. But although the brand still has difficulty competing with the likes of Synology and QNAP on a software level, they try to close the gap as much as they can. It has to be said that in terms of what you're getting in a flash solution, this thing is bonkers. Arriving in 2 versions, there's the standard F8 SSD and F8 SSD Plus, so that's a price tag of between $499 and $799 with sales knocking around. The higher tier model, this one, is the N305 8-core i3, I believe, Alder Lake processor there. Now, with that, it also arrives with 16 gig of DDR5 memory. It also has a 10 GB E slot there on the rear. But on top of that, the system also has 8 individual M.2 NVMe slots inside. It is an 8-bay flash solution there, which is an enormous amount of storage. Now, they are restricted to Gen 3x1 speed because of that CPU that's inside the very efficient, but only 8 to 9 lane N305 there. But it's still a huge amount of storage potential. Given that M.2 NVMe's are now going up to 8 gig each if you choose, there is some huge storage potential to be racked in there with a very power efficient CPU inside to lower temperatures, lower power consumption, and have a very capable system. But it doesn't stop there, because once you factor in that you may want to not use the TOS software that it arrives with, that's when you can open the door to TrueNAS and Unraid. TerraMaster allow users to install third-party operating systems on this. So if you want to get this as a turnkey solution, you can do it with TOS 6 included. But alternatively, you can get a hold of one of these that's definitely going to be on sale, and then from there, install Unraid on it, install TrueNAS on it, and then suddenly you have got a desk-mounted 8-bay M.2 NVMe flash system with ZFS TrueNAS core or TrueNAS scale on it there. That is exceptional, and as I've mentioned in other videos, trying to build this in this scope with this hardware, I'm not going to say it isn't possible, but I'd say if you go down the build your own DIY route, you can get the N305 10G motherboard in ITX, knock around for about 150 to 200 odd nicker, get the CPU, get the memory. You might be able to build something like this. You may even get a relatively small case and get the cost at 500. But as a complete out the door package that's turnkey, the F8 SSD Plus has just blown me away. That said, I'm not going to lie, the fact this has only got one Ethernet port on there kind of annoys me. That's right, it was always going to be on there, wasn't it? Although the Flashstor Gen 2 never made it onto the list, I'll say the Gen 1 is still turning heads. Is it the most powerful NAS on this list? Not even by a long shot. Rocking out with an Intel Celeron on the M5105 CPU, let's be honest, that processor is starting to show its age. Most NAS producers and the brands out there in the market were using that CPU in the early stages of 2022, and now it's the end of 2024. I'm not going to say that CPU's turning heads. There's no support of ECC there. It's a Celeron, so you've got integrated graphics, tick, which is lovely, but Why on earth is this system that is now, I'm not going to say showing its age, but at least the hardware architecture is arguably older than most out there, why is it still on the list? Well, we're talking about a 6 or a 12 bay NAS system. If we focus on the 12 bay, this 12 bay is $750. For that, you've got 12 M.2 NVMe slots. You have got a 10 GBE output there. You've got HDMI out. You've got an unusual SPDIF audio output socket as well. It arrives with 4 gig of DDR4 memory that can be scoped up to 16 when needed on a single slot there. It has a low power consumption, a low physical imprint in your local environment there. On top of that, although each M.2 NVMe slot is limited to 3 times 1 speed, and with that CPU you're not going to be getting blistering output, there's only a single 10G on the rear anyway, so you're not going to be able to make the most of it anyway. You can't really go outside of the 10G. Now you can use 2.5 and 5 gig adapters that are on supported compatibility lists to open up more network connections. It doesn't have USB 4 or Thunderbolt connectivity like the Gen 2 does. But again, we're talking about a system that in the 6 bay version is only about 450 Nika, and the 12 bay at 750 Nika, and it's the value of what you're getting here. It's not the most powerful on the list, and if I wanted to, I could scale up to some real enterprise grade stuff. I could look at the FU or FX series from QNAP. I could look at some serious flash servers from the likes of Synology, but I do know that once you factor in the price point that these systems can arrive with at $3,000, $5,000, $10,000, you have to sort of work on a question of scale, what you're getting for your money. And again, time and again, there is a reason that when you talk about SSD flash servers online in the last year, the Flashstor keeps coming up in the conversation. And again, much like TerraMaster, you can go ahead and install your TrueNAS, install your Unraid, install Open Media Vault. You can use ADM. It's got write once, read many. It's got the apps. It's got everything you need. But it has to be said that this system still cuts mustard more than a year since its release. But there you go, those are the best SSD flash desktop NAS solutions that you should buy at the end of 2024 and going into 2025. Is there something I missed? Do you disagree with any of my points? Do you think there was a better NAS that's more deserving? Let me know. There's an article in the description that links a little bit more information about why we picked the NAS we picked, myself and Ed here at NAS Compares. But of course, let me know in the comments about your own suggestions. And there are links below to a few different retailers where you can get hold of some of these items that I've talked about today. So if you found the video helpful, and if you were going to shop at those stores anyway, please use those links to do so. Make sure those two things are true. But if you use those links, we get a commission here at NAS Compares. It is just me and Eddie running this joint, and it allows us to keep doing what we do. But apart from that, have yourselves a fantastic week.